will be taking place every 2 weeks on a Wednesday. So we bless this opportunity, and it's really for those who maybe struggle to attend on the Monday or who need that extra boost to keep them going through the week. So this is a great blessing which the Mashaykh have given us, and it just shows the care and compassion that they have for us, that they want to make sure that throughout the week that we can regularly keep steadfast. And this is what this majlis is here for. And also it gives a message to us that we should try to share this message and get other people to come, not just help ourselves, but help others in the same way they're trying to help us. So we'll just briefly go over the etiquettes, is to come with the right mindset, that we're here only for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and any other preconceived ideas or anything which we have, leave it at the door, and to come with an empty cup, empty mind. Because as you might have heard before, a cup that is full, it's very difficult to put anything else, any more water, any more liquid in there. So we need to empty that cup, and that is our mind. So we need to empty our mind of any other preconceived idea, anything that was going on during the day, to completely let go of it and to come to the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is the one who has invited us today to His house to attain blessings from Him. So we should get into the mindset, Allah is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is listening to me. And to correct our intention that we're here only for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So also try to keep your phones on silent. And inshallah we'll conduct the masjid salat us. We'll just play a naat, and then after the naat we will start the majlis inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, indeed all praise is due to Allah. We praise Him and seek His help and forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from our soul's evils and our wrongdoings. He whom Allah guides, no one can misguide, and he whom He misguides, no one can guide. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, alone without any partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His messenger and servant. O Allah, send prayers upon Muhammad and the followers of Muhammad, as you sent prayers upon Ibrahim and the followers of Ibrahim. Verily you are the praiseworthy and majesty. O Allah, send blessings upon Muhammad and upon the family of Muhammad, just as you sent blessings upon Ibrahim and upon the family of Ibrahim. Verily you are full of praise and majesty. And be not like those who forget Allah, so He made them forget themselves. Those are the defiantly disobedient. Surah Hashr. The definition of heedlessness is showing a reckless lack of care and attention. Now, heedlessness is something that many Muslims suffer from. And how do they suffer from this? Is because they end up getting stuck in dunya, getting stuck in the traps of dunya. Whilst they're stuck in dunya and they're inside the traps of dunya, they forget about Allah and they forget His rights, they forget His commands. And at the same time, what happens is they become obedient to shaitan and they become obedient to nafs automatically. You see, if a person is not obedient to Allah and His Messenger, then there is no neutral area. It's either he's obedient or he's disobedient. Whether he obeys and whether he disobeys. So, in this ayah that I mentioned in this verse, and be not like those who forgot Allah, so He made them forget themselves. Those are the defiantly disobedient. Allah mentions that they are the defiantly disobedient. Why are they the defiantly disobedient? And also, Allah made them forget themselves, as He mentioned. So He made them forget themselves. But how did He forget them? Made them forget themselves. He made them forget their reality, and He made them forget who they are, which purpose they were sent for, why they were created, the covenant they took. So, as you are aware, we came from the Alam al-Arwah, the world of the spirits. Now we're here in the dunya, and after this we will leave to go towards the great world, and after the day of judgment. Now, in this actual verse is a very severe punishment, because Allah says Himself that be not like those who forgot Allah, and then Allah mentions He made them forget themselves. So what does that mean? That Allah has made them forget themselves, made them forget their own reality, made them forget their purpose. So Allah has actually left them to their disobedience. So some people, you might see that they just continue doing evil, and you see that there's no punishment for them, and they're just going lower and lower. It's actually the most severest punishment, because what's happened now is Allah's left them to go deeper and deeper into the sin, go deeper and deeper into the disobedience. So what will happen is, for them people, is the punishment will be more severe, not just in the dunya. What's happening is, like for example, if a person has a bank balance and he works, the more he works, the more he earns, the bigger the bank balance is. In the same way, the more evil a person does, the more his bank balance is in terms of punishment. So what Allah does to this person is He leaves him in his disobedience until the angel of death comes, and then after that Allah gives him all the punishment at once, after that, forever. Now, how does a person become reckless and how does a person become heedless? Is three things that make you forget your reality and your purpose and why you were created and why you come on this earth. The first thing is shaitan, the second thing is nafs, and the third thing is dunya. And Sheikh Ahmad al-Baris also mentioned that these things, they can't win. You see, let's say for example, if we have a football game or a boxing match, one team wins, one team loses. But in this scenario, either you win or they both lose, or you both lose. So, for argument's sake, if a person commits a sin, now this sin he has committed, but now he has lost. But let's say, for example, Shaitan and Nafs was behind that sin. Let's say, for example, that it was the desire of women and the Nafs wanted that sin. Or it was anger that made him commit this sin and Shaitan was behind this sin. Now, they've both lost because Shaitan is already going towards hell and Nafs is going to be punished with you if you end up in hell. So rather than them winning and you losing, you have now both lost. But rather, if you did not commit the sin, or if you were not heedless, you would have won, whilst they would have still lost. So it was mentioned that only the human can lose, because the shaitan and the nafs, they've already lost. They're already in disobedience, so they've already lost. But only the human can lose, because if he is disobedient, then he will be punished as well. There is no winner then. So how do these three things that we've just mentioned distract us? For example, we have the nafs. Now the nafs, the ego, the desires, all it wants is pleasure. It doesn't care whether the pleasure is halal, it doesn't care whether the pleasure is haram. Maybe he gets pleasure in doing worship, maybe he gets pleasure in chasing women, maybe he gets pleasure in doing drugs. It doesn't care if it's halal or haram. He cannot differentiate between what is halal and what is haram. For argument's sake, if a person goes out and earns, or for example, if a person spends money on clothes, or with that money he could also spend going into a nightclub. The money is spent, but the desire, whether it's clothes or whether which is halal, or whether it's going into a nightclub which is haram, the desire is still there. Now the biggest weapon of the nafs is feelings, and it uses this to get what it wants. The best thing to describe it is, for example, you see these movies or you see these programs where you have a child and he's in a supermarket and he's lying on the floor and his parents said you can't have the chocolate, and he won't move. He'll just be lying there crying. That's what the nafs is until and then because he's embarrassing the parent, then the parent says, okay, you can get it. That's what the nafs is like. He won't stop. He will continually cry. It might be a week, he'll still be crying for that thing. And for example, feelings, for example, laziness. He uses feelings, for example, anger. He uses feelings, laziness, jealousy. An example of laziness is not praying. An example of anger is he hits someone. You hit someone. So this is the biggest weapon of the nafs, is feelings. If you can overcome this feeling, then you can overcome the shaitan very easily. You see, also nafs is like a snake. You might think, let's say, all of a sudden he's bitten. Let's say, for example, out of the blue, you might commit a big sin, but you might think, where's this come from? But the only problem is we need to realize is that it's not come out of nowhere. This has been months in development. You might have been feeding it for months and months and months. There's actually a story of which I read, in which a woman, she bought a pet python, and you might have heard the story. And it used to be coiled up. She used to feed it, and it used to be coiled up at the bottom of the bed, and it used to sleep at the bottom of the bed. And what used to happen was, whilst they were sleeping there, it used to do, every morning would be sleeping there. And what happened was, there became a time when this snake, this python, it started sleeping straight next to her, and she got concerned. She went to the vet or whoever, the snake specialist, and she said, why is this? It started to be, first it used to be coiled at the bottom of the bed, and it used to sleep at the bottom of the bed. Why is it all of a sudden sleeping straight beside me? And the person who the expert was, and she went to, he mentioned that what the snake is doing is it's trying to size you up so it can decide when to eat you. And in the same way, this is like the nafs. It's what the problem is with the nafs is, we think that all of a sudden we've committed a major sin, or we've committed a big sin, or something that we think is big. But it's not just happened as a coincidence or a one-off. Something's been happening in the background that's led to that. Maybe let's say for example, maybe you were in the habit of doing wudu before you went to sleep, and now because it's cold outside and it's winter and the water's a bit colder, you've stopped doing that and you started feeding him. See, that's what happens is you initially feed him, and at this moment in time he's like under your foot, like the snake is at the bottom of the bed. So you keep feeding him, and what will happen is, or maybe what's happened is you've not been looking at women, and recently what's happening is one or two glances have started happening. Or for example, you've before you weren't swearing and now you started to swear. Or let's say you used to pray at home, pray at the mosque with Jamaat, now you started to pray at home. See, in the same way, what happens is the nafs, you feeding it, and what's happening is it's starting to lie straight on the side of you, and eventually what will happen is it will overpower you because you've been feeding it in small amounts. So it's getting fed, it's getting stronger. When you feed something, it gets stronger. When it says that you should pray your dua before you eat, why? Because the shaitan doesn't eat the food. So what happens then is the influence of him is weakened because his power is weakened. So in the same way, if you don't eat, if you don't feed the nafs, if you start feeding the nafs, then what happens is the nafs will get bigger and bigger and bigger till he lies on this, till he's not under your feet anymore. Until what will happen is, out the blue, you'll commit a mistake and you'll think, well, how did this happen? How did I go from not doing nothing to something major? But if you look at it, you have been doing things, but they've been so small, and the nafs is so tricky that he's made you think that you've not been doing it. So that's the way the nafs takes over you. So in the same way, you have dunya. It's the temptations, lust, women, cars, money, business, name, fame. It tries to lure you into its trap. And it tries to lure you into its trap by first making you think that what's happening is you're actually doing it with a good intention. And you might think that, yes, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to earn all this, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to earn all this money, and so I can go build mosques, for argument's sake. But what happens is, once the money comes, or once what happens is, let's say for example you started a business, and what happens is, shaitan thinks, dunya comes to you and mentions that, you should open a business. With that business, you can go on Jamaats, you can give money to people who are going on Jamaats around the world. But then what happens is, you get trapped in the business to the extent that you start missing your salahs, and you start getting trapped in, the money starts coming and you start forgetting about your salahs. We've heard about the story of the person at the time of the Sahabas who was poor, and then what happened to him was he came to Rasulullah and he asked to make dua so his risk would increase or in business, and Rasulullah said that to Nisrina, maybe something else is better for you, and he kept asking to the point where Rasulullah asked for the dua and he became a very rich person. And when it came to zakat, what did he say? He said, I've not got the money, or I don't want to give it. So at the same time, his intention was pure. Look who he asked Rasulullah. His intention was pure. But afterwards, what happens? The dunya takes over. It's like this dunya, it's like, for example, Imam Ghazali mentioned that imagine you're in a jungle, you're running through the jungle, and you're walking through the jungle, next thing, hungry lion is in front of you. And that hungry lion, he's looking at you, he's not eaten for about 4 or 5 days, he's hungry. Now he sees you, he sees ghost, and now he's running at you and you're running from the lion. And from the lion, you see a well, so you jumped into it trying to avoid the lion. And then you're hanging on by a branch in the well, and inside of the well, you look down, there's a big black snake with his mouth open, and you look up and the line's still there. So you're in a bit of in a bad situation. Then you have two mice, one white one, one black one, and they start nibbling on the branch. So now either way, it's over. But then for one split second, you see a honeycomb, and you stick your finger in the honey, and you put it in your mouth, and that sweetness has made you forget your situation. And Imam Ghazali mentioned that's like dunya. So what happens is it makes you forget your purpose. And Allah's commanded, you see it's strange because Allah's commanded dunya to serve us, but we're serving it. The biggest example of this is politicians. And singers, they're the best example. They have dunya, but why do they still commit suicide? They have all the dunya, they have everything that you could, whatever we could ever wish for, they have in the palm of their hands, but they still commit suicide. And look how, for example, dunya finishes these politicians after a lifetime of loyal service. They're loyal servants to the dunya. But what happens to them? Look at, for example, Saddam Hussein. Look at Gaddafi. Look at, for example, people like Hitler. And they've been completely, at the end of it, they've all, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi on public executions, live on TV. Hitler shot himself. Look at, for example, Obama. We have only a couple of years ago, he was the most powerful, as they say, most powerful man in the world. But now, he's just a normal person, probably on a pension. You don't hear from him. That's loyal service. It just gets what you want. It's like a sponge. It just takes all the water out and just leaves you and just throws you away. Now, in the same way, for example, look at Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great had one of the biggest empires in history, from all the way from Macedonia all the way to India, even in Pakistan. He conquered Pakistan, and he died. He conquered all of this by the age of 32, and he died. He died, and they said that when he died, he said, "Leave my hands outside the coffin to show that I had the whole world, but I'm not taking nothing with me." See, this is where dunya, it chews you up and it spits you out, literally. But then on the other side, you've got people like Imam Suyuti. We mentioned that after the age of 40, I didn't teach anyone. I started to prepare for my death. He didn't teach anything because what's mentioned is that after 40, it's like how you throw a ball up, the ball's going up all the way to 40, and then when he hit 40, the ball starts coming down due to gravity. After that, they didn't teach anyone. See, what we don't understand is the course, this course that we do, the course of self-purification. It's not just a course, it's not a degree course that people think, oh, it's just a course, 3-year course, that's it, once it's done, it's done. It's your preparation for death. If you look at it like that, then you won't be heedless on the path. Yes, you will fall because we have enemies. We have Shaitan still on our case. We have nafs that's still there, still wants his desires. We have dunya, still want their desires. But the reality is, imagine tomorrow if you thought that this tazkiyah course or the self-purification course is your preparation for death, you wouldn't do it. Again, what was the definition of heedlessness? It's showing a reckless care, lack of care and attention. It's like, for example, if a person who's driving now and he's driving, doing 70, 80 on a 30 road and driving recklessly, what's going to happen? He's going to end up in a wall. He's going to kill himself or he's going to kill someone. In the same way, if we are showing a reckless care of attention to the cause, then this is what's going to happen. Yes, you will fall, but the reality is that if you keep on it, it's not, like I said, I mentioned, it's not a degree course where you think, oh, it's a 3-year course, after that then you can do what you want. It is your preparation for death. So if you treat it like that, then alhamdulillah, you get very far, very quick. Again, the third enemy that we have is Shaitan. You may have heard the story of a conversation between a prophet of Bani Israel, I think it was mentioned, and Shaitan, where Shaitan came to him and approached him and said, why do people like yourself I have no control over? And they mentioned that to Shaitan, that how do you control people? And he said that Shaitan said that no, you tell me first. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, no, you're Shaitan. If I tell you first, then you won't tell me later. So he came and so he asked him, okay, you tell me first. So Shaitan said, okay, I'll tell you first. There's two ways I get people. Number one is through their desires and what they're after. I present the desires. I know what the desires are, and I come from them angles. And number two, anger. Whenever a person is angry, he's under my control. He's under my foot. So see how the tables turn. As soon as you're angry, instead of him being under your foot and us being under your foot, you're not under their foot. So that's the first way he does it. So how does he do this? How does he show you dunya? It's like he's a salesman. So he sells dunya to you, sells the temptations of dunya. For example, if you go buy a car and you think, oh, right, and you get a salesman and everyone says, oh, car salesmen, they're like this, because they're selling you cars. Maybe you might not want to buy the car, but now once you sign the contract, it's like what they say, once you drank the orange juice, you sign the contract. You have to sign the contract. So in the same way, that's what he does. He sells temptations of the dunya to you. And he knows our weaknesses and what our desires are, what our nafs want. And then that's what he does. He knows what we want, and that's what he presents to us. If a person has the desire to gamble, he won't put women in front of him. It's useless. Or if a person's got a desire for women, he won't put, for example, cars and stuff in front of him, because it's useless. He doesn't want that. Or if a person who wants fame and name, he doesn't put other desires like drugs in front of him, because he's not interested. So in the same way, this is how he sells. He knows what we want, so he sells it. In the same way, he uses the second way he uses it is nafs. So he manipulates the nafs to try to get a reaction. So for example, he'll try to get a reaction out of the nafs by whispering directly to the nafs. For example, if someone swears at you, he'll say, oh, you're going to let him get away with that. If someone disrespects you, oh, he disrespected you in front of your family, what are you going to do about it? So he pokes you, tries to get a reaction out of you. And the second, or for example, laziness. It's cold outside, do you really want to play with your mom? Fajr time now, for example, it's cold outside. Oh, it's windy. Oh, it's raining. Do you really want to go play with your mom? It's nice and warm in your room, just play here. Or for example, and then it's up to you. Are you going to let the nafs then kick in and react to the shaitan and let him take that desire? Or like for example, anger or laziness. Or for example, jealousy. You might say, oh, look at him, he's got that. It shouldn't be his, it shouldn't be yours. And then that again triggers the nafs. And see, when he triggers the nafs and the nafs responds, it might be once in a while, but what happens is because we've been feeding it slowly, and then we don't realize that, and then once he reacts, and it's like, for example, you just think, how is he, I had him under control, how is he all of a sudden, how is he just maybe commit this sin? But what happens is, again, we've been feeding him. Maybe, for example, our dhikr we've not been doing properly, or maybe we're missing a couple of days. It's like medication, or we've been taking the medication, so we've not been taking it, it'll overpower us. So all these three things, they have one purpose. They've just got one purpose, and that one purpose is to make you heedless of your purpose. So their purpose is to make you heedless of your purpose. So they're doing their purpose, they're actually on target, they're doing their purpose, what they're set out to do. It's us that's what we're doing is we're forgetting. Now how do we protect ourselves from all three of these enemies at the same time? The Mashaykh have given us a layered protection against all three so they can't harm us. So let's say for example, the Nahal Yamanuni there has layers of protection. They've actually given us a full 5-layer protection against all three of these enemies. So before we talk about the layered protection, we have to talk about our objective. So first of all, We have to change our objective. Before, if our objective was, I want children, I want wife, I want a business, we have to change that because that's not our objective. So first, again, we mentioned that we have our purpose, and Shaitan, he has his purpose, and nafs and dunya. So their purpose is to make us forget our purpose. So we have to first remember what our purpose is, which is our objective. Now, our objective is to make our life revolve around Allah. And this way, you've already taken one enemy out, dunya. Because now, once you're revolving around your life around Allah, dunya, instead of you serving dunya has come back and is serving you. Because Allah has mentioned that the one who serves me serves him. Now, they further mention to build 5 walls, barriers around you so you can't be harmed. So after you've first of all figured your purpose, now you're on a level playing field. Before it was Shaitan that was making you forget your purpose and nafs and desires and dunya. But now you know your purpose, they know their purpose, so now it's level. So now it's time to build the barriers. So even if one barrier is damaged, Shaitan, nafs and dunya can still enter through it. It's like, for example, if you got perimeter, like in the olden days, in the medieval times, they used to have fortresses that used to have gates. Like, for example, when we go to Fez, you got the different gates to enter into Fez. These barriers, they're like gates. So if one gate's open, they don't need to go into the other 4, they can still come into the 5th one. So what are the 5 walls? What are the 5 gates and barriers that protect? Imagine it's like a fortress. So the first wall is working for dunya. And you might think, how come it's working for dunya? Why is it not something more to do with deen? Why is it to do with dunya? Because what happens is, the first one is working for dunya. How? Because what happens is, it prevents you from being lazy. Because, so basically you're indirectly forcing your nafs into submission. For argument's sake, it might be harder for you to wake up for Fajr and go pray at the mosque because on a winter's day because it's cold. But let's say, for example, if you have work at 7 a.m, you know you have to get up and go. There's no 2 ways about it. Whether we might do it for Salah, or we could pray at home, but when it comes to work, we'll definitely be there. So that's what happens, is you're forcing nafs into submission, but indirectly you're doing it by busying yourself. So let's say, for example, so that's working for dunya. Number 1 is to earn a halal income and busy yourself. Number 2 is to work hard but don't seek more money than that's destined to you. But know that whatever, be happy and content with whatever you get, because this could lead to a haram or lead you away from deen. For argument's sake, if you're earning, for example, £1,000, but you're not happy, your expenses are getting covered, but you're not happy with it, you want £2,000, maybe you want more savings, maybe you want a nicer car. But what's happening is, maybe you can't earn that halal, so maybe you have to resort to haram to earn that. So that's why you should be happy with, you've done your minute, so what you should be happy with now is what you're earning. Now, this is the first one. So small was the first one.
What was that?
What was the first one?
Which one?
The barrier.
Haram.
Yeah, so it's working for dunya. Yeah. So second one is death is waiting like a guest for you. So when someone has knocked on the door and is waiting outside, even though you're busy and your back's turned, let's say for argument's sake you're in the kitchen and you're doing something, let's say you're cooking for example, and someone says to you, let's say a family member comes and says, let's say for example, someone says to me, oh, Siraj has knocked on the door. Now I know, back of my mind, Siraj is waiting, even though I'm still doing that thing. I know he's waiting on the door. So my mind is now, I might be still cooking or I'm doing something, but my mind is still focused on Siraj, knowing that he's waiting for me. I need to go attend to him. Now, in the same way, if you think that death is waiting like a guest for you, the angel of death visits a person every day, seeing what we're doing, and he'll be taking us. You already know that. So why does this? So it makes you think that dunya is not a priority anymore. Because what happens is now, is remember what we just mentioned, that, for example, if a person's cooking and like we mentioned, that Siraj is waiting. Your mind's now shifted onto Siraj. It's not shifted on the cooking anymore. You just want to get that done as fast as possible because you know you need to go to see Siraj. So in the same way, dunya is not a priority. It's like you making the food. Your priority now is the person waiting on the door. So in the same way, it creates a sense of urgency in a person. So this is the second gate, the barrier that we have to protect ourselves. And so the third barrier is there's certain rights we have to deeply comprehend, deeply think and meditate on this, that there's certain rights of Allah upon me that nobody else can fulfill these rights. For example, nobody can eat for you. If, for example, if I get some food here, I can cook the food, I can go get the food, I can go to the butchers, get the meat, I can go get the vegetables and sabzi from another place, I can go get everything, I can make the roti, I can make everything, but I can't feed you, you have to eat yourself. In the same way, there's rights of Allah that only you can fulfill, nobody else can fulfill them for you. So, for example, a father knows his responsibility to provide for his children. Nobody's going to come and do it for him. Let's say, for example, if you have kids, nobody's going to come, your neighbour's not going to come and feed your kids or go out and work for you. You've got to do it. In the same way, Allah has rights upon you that only you can fulfill. How? What happens is, so how is this a barrier to protect you against heedlessness? Is that what happens is, it makes you forget, it makes you realise your responsibility. So before you didn't think that you had a responsibility, so but now what happens is you know that you have a responsibility now that you need to fulfill. So maybe, for example, a person has qazas that he's being very lazy, thinking, okay, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. But these are rights that he needs to do today. And most of us, in this example, this is a problem for us. Most of us is qazas that we have the feeling that, oh, it's okay, we'll do it tomorrow. But again, it's the right. So the fourth wall is the three keys, that Allah is with me, Allah hears me, Allah is watching me, and He is closely watching every deed that I do. So when a person keeps meditating on this and he brings this into his mind all the time, what happens is, and he never forgets this, what happens is that he knows that Allah will hold him responsible for this. Let's say, for example, if he's been heedless, he knows that tomorrow, on the Day of Judgment, I'm going to get asked about this time. So what am I doing here? Why am I wasting it for? The fifth wall is a person should think that with every breath, our life is coming to an end. See, when you're eating, you're breathing. When you're sleeping, you're breathing. So in every breath, a person's life is coming to an end. And this is another thing that when we think that about our risk, we forget. Let's say, for example, sometimes we lose our job and we go and we're searching for risk, we're running around for risk, worried. But we're forgetting that breath is risk, blinks are risk, movement of your arms and legs is risk. So you're actually losing your risk right now with your blinks and your breaths whilst you're going around looking for risk, worried about that. That's the situation that we're in. Is that we're losing the risk that we've got, worrying about finding more risk, which the one that's already fixed that you're getting, we're losing that. So how does thinking about our last breath coming to an end, how does this build a wall? It makes a person realize that he's not got much time and time's against him. Because like I mentioned about the course, if you think that the course is just a degree course that a person is going to do in university, you're just going to do it haphazardly. You're not bothered. Oh, it's free stages. For example, in university we have 3 years. Oh, it's only 3 stages. I'll just do this. Okay, we can resit a year in uni. We'll keep resitting those tick sheets. Well, the reality of it is that it doesn't work like that. If a person thinks that their time is against him and he thinks that the course is actually, the course is actually his saving and his preparation for death, then what happens is he's automatically in a different time. He's completely in a different frame of mind. You can both be doing the course. If one person doing it Allah, one person is actually doing the course properly, there's a heaven and earth difference between them. Even the feelings, what they're going to be going through, are going to be different. So these 5 things, if you embed them into your brain to the extent that it becomes your reality, it will protect you against all 3 enemies. But again, you have to remember that these are gates, barriers. If one falls, then the enemy can come through that side. So we need to try to, all 5 of them, try to simultaneously think about them and embed them one by one. So first of all, we need to build the gates. So one by one, we need to add them to our lives. So it's like, for example, see, again, another thing is that everyone falls. What happens is we get disheartened when we fall. Let's say, for example, if a person's, again, we mentioned before about the person, if he's all of a sudden committed a major sin, or all of a sudden he's committed a sin that he's ashamed of, and what happens is we lie down and think, you get disheartened and start getting depressed. But what happens is that we have to understand in these situations that Allah doesn't look at one situation, He looks at overall. He doesn't look at, like Ustaz once mentioned, Allah doesn't look at a certain situation, He looks at overall if you've been disobedient. If you've been disobedient for 364 days in a year, and you were been obedient for 364 days in a year, and you've been disobedient for 1 day, Allah will overlook that one day. So this is another thing that we need to understand, is that because what happens is with these 3 enemies, we keep thinking that these 3 enemies that, we keep falling, but you've not just got one enemy against you, it's like you're fighting 3 people at the same time. So eventually you might not win the battle, but try to win the war. It's like, for example, Uhud. We know about the story of Uhud when that battle was lost, but the war was won. So you have to have that mentality. Even in the Seerah, there's lessons. So we shouldn't focus on getting depressed and lie down and think, that's it. Because this is the wrong reaction. This is what Allah dislikes. And this is basically what this is like, giving yourself to the enemy. It's like handing yourself in, waving a white flag. Or in boxing match, throwing the towel in. And nobody likes the person who throws the towel in. So that's what we have to do, is we have to focus on getting up. We have to shift our mindset from keep falling and getting depressed and just, as soon as you're doing your tawbah, forget about it. It's happened. Now just focus on getting up and just carrying on. Because if it's like, for example, a tyre in a car, you've punctured one tyre, you don't get a knife and puncture all 3 and sit down with the rest of the 3 that will keep fine. Say, right, I can't move now. What happens is you fix that tyre, carry on with your journey. So in the turn, it's like tawbah, it's like fixing the tyre, it's alright now. The tyre is fine, carry on. So this is what we have to do, and every time you fall, you have to take, this is another thing that I watched a 5-minute clip, and I'll try to find it and put it on the group. And in this 5-minute clip, what I mentioned, it was a famous actor, Christian Bale, the one who played Dark Knight. And basically, in this he was doing a motivational speech, and what he said was that if a person shouldn't focus on what he's directly aiming for, what he should focus on is, let's say, for example, if he ends up in a situation where it's not like him, he should think that this isn't me, this isn't what I'm about. And what will happen is, he will find his purpose in life. And what he mentioned was, let's say, for example, if a person commits a sin, he shouldn't focus on the sin and focus on, how did I get in this mess, or get depressed. What he should do is, he should take something from the nafs, but take it forever. Let's say, for example, if a person likes watching football on a Friday, take that away from him. Or let's say, for example, if a person likes watching another TV program, take that away from him, but just take it away from him forever. He won't feel it because he's got so many other things that he still likes and that desires that he does. But if you keep taking one away from him every time you fall, what will happen is that the actor said, you'll innocently find your purpose. So eventually he'll have nothing to go for. You've taken everything away from him one by one. But that's how you, instead of lying down, that's how you get back at him. So that's one way of getting back at the shaitan. So, and one of the ways in which these walls can be built is to follow the course. So basically, if a person follows the course of how he's supposed to do, like I mentioned that as his preparation for death, then what will happen is he'll already build all this, because automatically he will have this this feeling at times against him that he needs to get it done before, and he'll automatically think death's at the door. So this is the best way that a person can prepare for death, is to follow the course. So Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Alhamdulillah, Ustaz Shaban has briefly presented to us the 5 barriers to combat heedlessness. So the only way we can really benefit from this now is not just by hearing, is by applying it to ourselves, and then also sharing it with others, and also inviting others to learn how to do this too. So now, inshallah, we will shortly just commence the zikr session, but before that, if others just want to stand up, stretch the legs to make sure their blood is flowing through the body and fresh, and inshallah we will start with the zikr session shortly.
الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا. مولاي صل وسلم على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين. محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين. والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق. قل ادعوا الله أو ادعوا الرحمن أيما تدعوا فله الأسماء الحسنى. الله 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 الذي لا إله إلا هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الله الذي لا إله إلا الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار سبحان الله عما يشركون سبحان الله عما يشركون سبحان الله عما يشركون سبحان الله عما يشركون الله الحي القيوم وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. Bless us with the goodness of this world and hereafter. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, we are directionless as you have mentioned in your holy book. فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. We are also aimlessly wandering here and there. Give us the true direction and purpose of life. Enable us to realize the true purpose of our life, which is to seek your pleasure. Enable us to realize why you have created us, what is our passion, which are the skills and abilities which you have blessed us with, and then enable us to pursue through them and to seek your pleasure and closeness and success in Akhirah, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Ya Rabbal Alamin, forgive our wrongdoings and sins, major and minor. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, whatever we have fallen short of by fulfilling your rights of your Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, forgive us, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Ya Rabbal Alamin, bless us with ta'ah and wisdom and knowledge from yourself, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Ya Rabbal Alamin, give barakah and blessing in all the blessing and ni'mas you have given us. Give barakah in our iman and faith, our good deeds, our homes, our children, our wealth, and whatever you have provided us by your fadl. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, protect the life and honor and wealth and health of all the Muslims. Bless all the non-Muslims with the light of iman and light of faith. Bless all the sinners with the light of tawbah. And bless all the pious with the light of taqwa and light of acceptance. Ya Rabbal Alamin, whoever is ill in any way, physically, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, give them shifa. Especially one of the brothers who have asked for their blessed daughter Zawiyah, who have an illness. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, by your fadl and grace, give her shifa kamila, ajila, and complete shifa from her illness, and whoever children or parents or anyone is ill, give them shifa. We know all these are tests for us, and they are calling us back to your remembrance. Enable us to take lessons from it, and enable us actually to, Ya Rabbal Alamin, take heed to it. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, grant us lawful livelihood. Whoever is in search of livelihood and rizq and job and business, guide them actually to where there is benefit for them. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, by your fadl and grace, whoever have passed away with the light of iman, forgive all those Muslim men and women, jinn and human beings since Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam up to now. Bless all the Muslims who are living with tranquility and peace. Wherever there is turbulence in countries like Syria, Iraq, Kashmir, Palestine, anywhere, Ya Rabbal Alamin, grant them peace and tranquility and safety so that they may live their lives with peace. Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Bless us with good rulers, enable us to become good subjects, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Bless us with good teachers and make us good students, Ya Rabbal Alamin. Enable us to become the best and the good worshippers of yours and the best and the good ummatis of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Rabbal Alameen, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. whoever is in any journey or going on any expedition, give them success in their in Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Enable us to have victory and give us your victory over any bad and evil habits which we have developed over time. Ya Rabbal, enable us to conquer any habit of drug, any other evil habit, whatever actually it is, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Enable us to purify our bodies, mind and heart and soul, and enlighten our spirits with the ma'rifah and with your love and the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Bless all these people, brothers and sisters who are here or who are not here, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Grant them peace in their hearts and tranquility in their hearts, and Ya Arhamar Rahimin, bless them in whatever actually they intend to do lawfully, and save us from any unlawful desires and wishes, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. We are your sinful servants, and definitely there are pious people here in the majlis, they are angels, they are malaika, they are children, they are pious, righteous people, Ya Rabbi, because of their barakah, accept our du'as. Bless our parents, wherever parents are living, with a long health and long life, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Whoever passed away and any relative who passed away, make their graves gardens of Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق سيدنا ونبينا وشفيعنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين.